PC prices are crazy, the Steam machine doomed, so I finally decided to cover a mini PC that I bought the other year, being the cheapest full PC that you can buy, and it's all thanks to the N100 processor. There's nothing that special about the N100, it just happens to be one of the first super low power processors to stand a chance of still being good enough to handle regular desktop activities. It combines the speed of a desktop with the power consumption of a Raspberry Pi. Or is it the other way round? You know what? Doesn't even matter. I like it cause it's cheap. Problem is, when I started with this video, you could get one of these PCs for about £70, RAM and storage included. Now, they charge more than £100 for the computer, and don't even include the RAM and storage. Madness. So this is the one that I bought last year, and it came to £112, including 16GB of RAM and postage. To get the same thing today, it's more like £165, and it'll probably cost even more by the time you're watching this video. But I know what question you'll be asking. Can it run Counter-Strike? Condition 0. Oh yes, look at that! Triple-digit frame rates in everybody's favourite game. This was totally playable on a server with bots. Don't let my poor skills, nor the sub 60 FPS lows deceive you. This was fine. The only time I noticed slight slowdown was when spectating high above the level. Just caused a weird pang of nostalgia in me to see a game from this era behave kind of like how I remember it behaving over 20 years ago. So if someone came up to you with a gun and was like, host a LAN party for Counter-Strike, and you had to pay for it all yourself, then a bunch of mini PCs sporting N100 processors is the way to go. See, I've been using this mini PC from time to time for over a year now, and my impression of it is that it's a bit laggy and slow in regular desktop use. But it turns out that's just because I've always paired it up with either a cheap TV or a 60Hz screen. When I plugged it into a proper 360Hz gaming monitor, yes, it was still limited to 120Hz, what with my HDMI cables and capture card, but it immediately felt smooth. No real difference between using this thing and my top-of-the-line Mega PC. But unfortunately that does mean that while the PCs for your LAN party might be cheap, you probably end up spending almost the same again on gaming screens with at least 120Hz refresh rates, just to make the most of whatever the N100 can pump out. But I know, you don't care if this PC can run Counter-Strike Condition 0. You're thinking about Source. Counter-Strike Source ran erratically. I started with maximum settings at 4x MSAA and it was about 30 FPS. Not great. But then it began to grow to 40, then 50, and then I was like, let's just set it to minimum and see what I can get. And then it crashed. I don't know what that was about, some sort of RAM leakage maybe, but I loaded it up again with bots, and provided I loaded it up at low settings, still 1080p though, it actually ran better than 1.6 did, an average of 133 FPS on Militia, which I chose because it was one of the newest and prettiest maps released for the game. Even the 1% lows remained above 60, so yeah, this was completely playable. So what's going on here? Welcome to the world of low power gaming. Think of the N100 as a slow processor, but one with lots of width. It's got 4 cores. When these games came out, most PCs only had 1 or 2. The N100 has onboard graphics, which are terrible, but remember we're using it to drive games that are more than 20 years old, so it's okay. The real limiting factor, I think, is with its power limit. It's stated to use 6 watts of power, but I think it uses a bit more than that under stress, and when reading the amount the whole system consumed, it was more like 20 watts in use. It's hard to tell what exactly is using that, but put it simply, this whole PC consumes about the same as a low-powered laptop. Which makes you wonder why you don't just get a low-powered laptop instead, since that comes with the screen and a battery and input devices built in as standard. But that's not my problem, so I'll chalk it up to a win with CSS as well. And now for the big boys. CSGO. How low will this thing go? Well, it didn't like it. I was forced down to 720p resolution, minimum settings, and averaged about 32 FPS against bots. Ugh. Now don't believe what people say about sub 60 FPS experiences. It doesn't have to be bad. It depends on the genre of the game you're playing, the engine implementation, your tolerance for shitness, and so on. And in this instance it was awful. Really bad and laggy feeling. I don't know if you've tried the graphical feature known as FrameGen just yet, but this is how it made it feel here. Overly smoothed mouse movements, all immensely exacerbated by the low frame rates. Not pleasant. So I kicked the bots and it raised the average frame rate to 41, yet the horrible laggy smoothing persisted. Spoiler alert, CS2 doesn't actually suffer from this same feeling at this sort of frame rate. It feels far snappier and more responsive, and I think it's because it's offloading more to the GPU than the CPU, and that in some way makes the lag feel different and better. And we all love better kinds of lag, don't we? But for one last trick with CSGO, I dropped the resolution even further, down to just 852 by 480. and this raised the frame rate to nearly 60 FPS, and the experience grew much more responsive. So there you have it. CSGO is playable on the N100, provided you play at lowest everything on an empty server. Now we get on to CS2. This, again, I didn't bother playing on anything but lowest everything at 720p, and I used FSR performance mode, which drops the real resolution down to 640 by 360, PS2 era resolutions. But while this was lower than CSGO was running at, thanks to FSR 1's clever upscaling trickery, it still looks terrible. And worst of all, the game was struggling. You know how you might experience a slight freeze as you fire a gun for the first time or break something in the level? Here it was a full-blown multi-second long freeze. I thought, hey, this is almost like time travel because I know I've hit something before I see it on screen, but then everybody else would be seeing the result instantly, so this might not be the win I think it is. So CS2, minimum settings, 34 FPS average with 1% lows of 4 and 0.1% lows of less than 1 frame a second. So why not play it with bots? This dropped the average frame rate down to 20 and the lows to, doesn't even matter anymore, sub 1 FPS. The game was literally freezing as I turned corners and tried shooting at enemies. Even the ragdolls appeared in slow motion. The game incapable of calculating this sort of effect in real time. It looked kind of cool. And luckily for me, this low frame rate seemed to hamper the bots just as much as it was myself, and they didn't fare much better, and I actually found it very easy to kill them. Although I was playing against medium bots, so it's hardly an achievement. But this is an unfair ask. An N100 was never designed to handle bots in a modern game. So I loaded up Online Deathmatch. Here we have to say goodbye to MSI Afterburner stats because Counter-Strike doesn't like you playing with them. It's considered a cheat, and Valve takes cheating very seriously, and the experience against real people was surprisingly not terrible. With the server handling much of the strain, the average frame rate on my little device rose to 38, and the lows to more than 1 FPS. My biggest problem was that I just couldn't really see what I was shooting at, it was just a blobby mess of pixels. But I still got some kills, several in a row at some points, against bots. But then the lag started, and I found myself stuck in places, teleporting to others, and worrying that I might get a VAC ban for unusual activity. But then I saw this guy, and he doesn't seem to be getting VAC banned, so I think I should be okay. All in all, the experience was awful, unplayable, good for nothing other than making this video. So can I recommend a mini PC like this for people wanting to get into CS2? Yes I can, provided you're content with opening cases and watching pro matches on it. For playing the game, don't go near this thing. If you're looking for something relatively cheap that can still run games like CS2, you'd be better off with a second-hand, bulky desktop PC. I'll be honest, mini PCs like this are a hassle. They seem cool and practical, but once you factor in the screen and the inputs, you're better off just getting the same components in a laptop of some kind. At least then you can run them off a battery or as an all-in-one self-contained device. But if you want a cheap little media PC to plug into a TV, then this sort of thing can, at the very least, stream other people playing CS2 pretty decently, which is probably how most of you interact with Counter-Strike these days anyway.